But just to set the stage, I was a businessman at one point. I'm now married. I have children. I'm becoming very successful in the vacation rental business in South Texas. And I moved from Boston, Massachusetts down there with my dad back in 2004. And I started to have some type of success, and I'm married now, but I was a full-blown alcoholic. I had a string of bad business deals happen, and I boxed myself in. I lost my career, lost my family directly after that. And once I didn't have them in my life, I made a conscious decision. I just started dabbling with crystal meth. And when they were gone, I moved into my father's house in Corpus Christi, Texas. The name of the city quite literally means the body of Christ. That's where the story was set. The stage was set in this city. And I became a nighttime cab driver. I'm now a junkie cab driver, diving deep on a suicide mission, deep into the underworld of crystal methamphetamines. Crystal meth, and I think this is why the book is so powerful and so popular right now. Crystal meth is a portal to the darkest places in the spiritual realm. It opens your brain up to all sorts of evil entities. And on my other social media pages, thousands and hundreds of thousands of comments. It's a worldwide phenomenon. So what I was about to experience was directly a result of that. So I start living a life of crime. I'm in the taxi. It becomes a rolling felony. I'm doing things to support my drug habit because it was the perfect venue. So I'm dealing with pimps, prostitutes, drug dealers, check cashers, money printers. I'm living an absolute debaucherous life. I was an addict of all things in the flesh. And I started to have major evil experiences. I started to have vulgar displays of power. I detail that in the book. I won't get too far into that, but I started to experience the spiritual realm. And the turning point of where it all came to a big turn was there's an accident photo, okay? And I was driving. I had been working way too much. I was driving my taxi, and I fell asleep at the wheel. It was a balmy October night, and I only had to make it one more exit up the road. And I found myself falling asleep. I woke up. I heard a loud crash. I found myself airborne at about 70 miles an hour, headed toward a big concrete sign the size of a redwood tree. And this is really when my spiritual awakening happened. I was sliding towards that big pole with that sign on top, the tires smoking, and I had 3 flashes where I saw it in slow motion, and I said, oh shit, that's concrete. And then I saw my daughter's face, and then right before impact, I thought I was gonna die. So I accepted my death. I was at peace. And then the white concussion. So the sign fell on my head. I watched the inside of the cab crush around me like a tuna can. That sign fell on top of the taxi. There was smoke everywhere. And long story short, I took this photo a week later. I actually checked myself out of the doctor before the x-rays even came back. And I had sawed all 5 ribs in half. My foot was crushed underneath the front seat. I was driving an old cop car turned taxi. So I took this picture, and this was the beginning of my spiritual awakening. Later on, if you take that photo and you zoom in to the top right, I had fallen asleep, and I'd crashed into the sign at the Christian Sleep Study Center. God had dropped a sign directly on my head to get me to take my foot off the gas. It's actually up to the right on the building.
I'm trying to get it over there.
Yeah. And you can see that. And that was a major sign for me. But I did not listen to the warnings of God. And I kept on going down the road to hell. And Ryder, I can tell you, it was covered in ice. About a year into this, I start going into psychosis a few months after this photo. I start experiencing all kinds of evil manifestations. I even started having contact with God. I was having big moments with God. I would feel the flame of God next to me sitting in my trap house. I was having major experiences with what I believe to be the Lord Jesus Christ. So
would you consider this experience, you crashing your car into this sign, a out-of-body experience or a near-death experience?
I would say I felt like there was something with me in the taxi. I detailed it where I felt something tug on my shirt. I look back in hindsight, and I believe personally that it was some type of angels or entities of light. And I was not in psychosis at that time. I was still hustling every day. I was deeply addicted to methamphetamines, but I was not crazy yet. And then a few months after this, I continued down the road, and I only got worse with my use. And I call it the Nebuchadnezzar effect. I remember in the book of Daniel, there was a story about a prideful king, and he was prophesied he was going to go crazy. Long story short, he goes crazy. He's eating grass like an ox in the fields. He loses his kingdom. God heals him. He comes out the other side. And whatever he experienced in between made him a believer in the one true living God. That's the story in the Bible anyway. So my story lines up with that very similarly. So I had that experience. Then I start going crazy. And I was now wearing a do-rag on my head. My house gets boarded up. I lost the girlfriend. I lost the taxi job, obviously, after that accident. It's a crazy story, but everything. They board the house up. It's 110 degrees in there. I'm living an absolutely hellish life. No running water, anything. And I'm walking 15 miles a day. I was a tortured soul. I was being tormented by dark entities. There's no doubt. The house was like a spiritual portal. I detailed it in the book. So I'm now insane. And I come to a breaking point. See, my father had spinal cancer at the time. I was a junkie, but I was also his caretaker. He disappeared. And the very last, I'd say like 2 months of my addiction to meth, he disappeared. There was a train of homeless drug addicts, all kinds of crazy insanity going on at the house. And eventually I had had enough. I walked home. A family member told me my dad passed away 3 weeks before. No one told me because I was so crazy. So I get to the house. I walk back to the house. I had self-inflicted wounds all over me. I was like the man from Gadarenes, the demon-possessed man. Hadn't drank water in 5 days, hadn't eaten in over a week. And I had my shirt off, some swim trunks on. The house is just demolished, drug paraphernalia everywhere, trash. And I passed out on the bed, and I woke up, and I looked over, and I saw a big blade, a kitchen knife, sitting on one of the old nightstands. And I remember looking at it, and I picked it up, and I verbally said, "This ends now." And I stormed out of the house. I threw a TV over my fence into my neighbor's yard, and I walked down to a fast food restaurant, and I poked my head into the door. The mental health system had failed me in the months leading up to this. I was being arrested for public intoxication almost every 3 days. I picked up a ton of those. They would bring me to the hospital, just your local mental unit at your regular hospital in Corpus. And then every 3 days I was being turned out of the mill. I also sought drug treatment twice in the months leading up to this and was rejected both times. In the richest country on planet Earth, I couldn't get help when I really needed it the most. I was a danger to myself and society as a whole. I was legally insane from methamphetamine substance abuse. I was in deep methamphetamine psychosis, later on discovered.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. How did other people around you respond to your psychosis? Were they around you also using methamphetamine, or how were regular people that weren't on drugs responding to you being in the psychosis at the time?
Anyone outside the drug world was terrified of my lifestyle. The methamphetamine lifestyle is the most evil, debaucherous, sinful life that a person could live. It's the craziest lifestyle a person can live. It's just around the clock, sexual deviancy. I mean, anything you could imagine, it's out there. Absolute crime. People were terrified. But the drug addicts in my life, at the very end, once my dad disappeared, they swarmed in and they played into my delusions. And they acted like, I believed I was in a hidden camera movie at one point, being filmed by satellites. I thought I was going to be the biggest comedic actor on the planet. I thought I was selected for this movie like The Truman Show, only it was like a reboot, a reality TV version. And you could not tell me that I was not in this real life Hollywood movie being filmed right there in the city of Corpus. My dad, there's so many stories that I based in the book off of that. I was convinced I was living in an absolute alternate universe. It was very spiritual. It was very, very spiritual. I started having downloads of all different types. I mean, it really changed me as a person. I started to, I went into the McDonald's as a cry for help. I couldn't take anymore. I was absolutely broken in every way. I felt like I was going to die, and I needed to take my life back.
How did you break that delusion, or did it break itself?
Well, I'll get to that in the next part, the very next part. So what happened was, and this is the fascinating part about the story about psychosis and everything. So I went into McDonald's. I told them, this is not a robbery. Everybody get out of here. There was 4 employees. They ran out the back door. I threw the knife on the floor, walked around. I grabbed a burger. I poured me a Coke. I took 1 bite of it, and then the cops show up. I just sat down peacefully. And the guy came up the drive with a 12-gauge shotgun cocked. Someone had called in an active shooter. And he told me afterwards in the cop car, he said, I was going to unalive you. And that was a scary moment. I could feel him wanting to end my life. So I was on the floor. I surrendered peacefully. I was facing some very extreme charges. Now, I'm in the state of Texas. It's the toughest state on crime in the nation. So that cry for help, because I took real property and because I had a weapon, I faced aggravated armed robbery, 5 to 99 years. I faced 3 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, 2 to 20 years each. That's 156 years stacked. They ended up having me look at about a 15-year prison sentence. So I'm now in Nueces County Jail, one of the toughest county jails in the United States to do time in. I'm absolutely crazy.
We have a clip here really quickly that I want to show before we get into the next part of the story.
Yeah, go ahead and show that clip. I'm sorry.
Scary moments for customers inside of a local McDonald's. Police were called to a McDonald's on Saratoga near Weber just last night to the report of a shirtless man inside holding a knife and yelling at customers. And he also took food without paying. The man was arrested after officers were able to convince him to lay down his knife. And after the incident, luckily, no one was hurt. But that man has now been identified as 36-year-old Patrick Christopher Durkin. He's charged with robbery and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Police say that he tried to force his way into a nearby home earlier in the evening, and then he'd actually broken into another home where he stole a flat screen television.